on the design of the technology, and that's why the definition of universal design is in there. But we're going to also ensure that assistive technology remained with us, because we're going to continue having interoperability issues. But overall, it has been in just this past year. I guess I'm going on. I'm sorry, but this past year, the UN Secretariat had a meeting on the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities, had a meeting at the World Bank, and we called in all the accessibility experts in the built environment and in technology. And I was commissioned to co-author a monograph on accessibility provisions of the convention. And we all talked about what the challenges were. And that's where we looked at the gaps in standards. Businesses don't know how to design. They don't have tools on how to design. We don't have we haven't mainstreamed the disability perspective in our law schools on legal policy. We haven't mainstreamed it in the engineering schools, in computer school. We haven't mainstreamed it throughout society. So we have a lot of challenges ahead, but I think the potential is even better now than ever before. The fact that a complaint was filed with Apple on this iPhone because that glass space was not accessible to the blind community. And Apple worked really hard, and they came up with a new way to enable a piece of glass that's flat, where I spent so much time at the City of San Jose, the ADA compliance officer, trying to figure out how we were going to have accessible touchscreen kiosks, coming to San Francisco and trying to look at what was going on here. Now, that was before the web. Now, but anyway, so we have, each time there's an innovation, we're now seeing this happen with the iPad, with an innovation that with voiceover, with text-to-speech. For the first time last year, a person with a visual disability could order an online ebook and immediately download it and immediately have access to it. That never happened before. But as a person with a hearing disability, I've always wished for the time when we could have captioning or real-time text instantly coming from a speaker. We don't have the software to do that yet. We can do drag and dictate for an individual person, but we don't have that for multiple speakers where the software, it doesn't know all the voice of all these people. But we're going to get there. Soon. We're going to get there.
Very soon. Should we do more questions? Yeah.
So I was interested in your comment about motivating engineers with more than just rules and regulations and whatnot. And you were talking about motivating them with something from the heart. I was kind of interested if you could flesh that out in terms of what the dialogue looks like and what sort of strategies have sort of worked for you to motivate people on that regard.
I think a lot of it has to do with exposing people to two things. One is, in some cases, a culture that they haven't engaged with before. So getting people from the disability community into those offices working there, getting them coming in when every product that's out there gets user tested until it bleeds. They have people who test it and test it and test it. Setting up front the expectation that you're going to include people with disabilities in the pool you're selecting is a very important factor. I would also say that it's creating a culture in the organization where people are allowed to bring those issues up as for themselves. It may be that they themselves have a disability that they haven't disclosed. The number of people at Intel who came to me when the Intel Reader launched, as I'm up there as poster boy, and it was always the same. They come to me and be like, "You can't tell anybody, but I'm dyslexic." I'm like, okay. And we would talk about it for a while, and over time they started saying, well, maybe I'll tell my boss. Okay, great. And you might actually be happy if you were known fully as who you are. In other disability areas as well. I think people have, in some cases, family members. The number of people who came with stories about my daughter's deaf, my kid has special needs, my mom is losing her vision, my brother has retinitis pigmentosa. It connects with people, and drawing that in, it takes leadership from the top. I would say one of the areas where invisible disabilities can be really valuable is that oftentimes people can get to the top of the organization without people knowing they have a disability and then out themselves. And there's a lot of significant Silicon Valley leaders who have disabilities. John Chambers is great about talking about dyslexia. He runs Cisco. He's really open about it, and it changes the culture of that organization.
Michael, you have a question? Yeah. Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm currently writing a comment for my journal on the 21st Century Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010. And I realized that we were talking about earlier about the Comcast set-top box being strictly closed captioning. I don't know how much true that is for regular television. For high-definition television, it's actually the user interface, or the interface between the box and the TV. So even if Comcast box is trying to pass it through, the HDMI cable inherently strips line 21. So it's like you all can see on high-definition televisions, it's kind of a ring of white around the visible area, which usually has been filled in by the lines that are above and below the normal visual spectrum. So,
and the broadcasting spectrum,
it's a failure of law to adequately force these companies to use accessible design in developing things like the HDMI cable.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's multiple issues, and I just want to address some of them. The first, regarding Comcast, they did not violate the 21st Century Video and Communications Accessibility Act. They violated existing FCC regulation 47 CFR 79.1, which is the obligation to pass it through. It is true that the new Communicate 21st Century Act does things like requiring that internet telephones that be able to work with people who wear hearing aids, which I'm happy about. And there's a lot of other pieces to it. But you were referencing HD, you were referencing broadcasting. The place where all this is happening regarding standards and a guideline is in Geneva at the UN, the International Telecommunications Union. The people who attend it are all the manufacturers who send their technical people there for standardization work, who of course is industry as well as the countries who are sending their policy people. And what happens in the standardization effort, you've got industry which is, it has a self-interest in what the future standards are going to be, because that's where their profit margin is going to be. And if there is no standard in an area that there needs to be, then there is a friend of mine whose name is Andrea Sachs. She has received a laureate last year, 2 years ago, on her work in accessibility. And she is what's called the joint convener for accessibility and human factors. And she ensures that all three sectors of the ITU, which is broadcasting, satellite, standardization, development, the third world, we talked about developing countries like Nigeria, and all that's going on, that all the sectors of the standardization work and development of this infrastructure, broadcasting, satellite, frequency, all this, that we have an agreement of what it would be. Because if, imagine what a mess it would be if, for example, anyway, that's where the international telecommunication rules stem from. And since I'm on this, I'd just say one thing. In October, the International Telecommunication Union revisited their treaty. It was in Guadalajara. I was on this U.S. State Department delegation to provide accessibility expertise, and we were able, the U.S. at the request of Syria, we combined 3 resolutions from Australia, Syria, and the U.S., and the U.S. led and enabled the plenary to pass the first landmark accessibility resolution for telecom. So we will be seeing fellowships that will enable persons with disabilities to participate in standard setting, because right now we have a problem with that. And we have a whole range of stuff that's coming out of that accessibility resolution and the amendment to the treaty. So all I can see at this point is, you know, I got my feet wet